The wind cut across Frostbite Canyon like a pack of hungry wolves, howling and snapping and clawing at anything foolish enough to cross in late winter. Cole Maddox had been called a lot of things, fool among them, but even he had to admit this crossing was pushing his luck. The canyon floor was a stretch of frozen river, the surface cracked with spider web fractures that glittered under the weak noon sun. His bay gelding snorted nervously, hooves slipping on patches where the ice turned glassy and thin. "Easy, Buckshot," Cole murmured, patting the gelding's neck. "Just another mile and we're clear." The wind didn't care. It slammed into him, biting straight through his coat. Snow swirled across the ice like ghostly dancers, rising and falling in unpredictable gusts. Cole hunched deeper, tugging his scarf higher. He had supplies to get to Grizzly Hollow before nightfall, and no storm was going to stop him. He was halfway across the widest stretch of the canyon when the first sharp crack sliced through the air. Buckshot froze. His ears shot forward. Cole felt the ice tremble beneath them, an unmistakable shudder, like the river waking up under its winter chains. "No," Cole whispered. "Not now." Another crack splintered out from beneath the horse's hooves. Cole kicked lightly, urging him forward, but Buckshot only managed 2 steps before the ice gave a deep groan, then exploded under them. The world dropped. Frigid water swallowed Cole to the chest in an instant. His breath ripped out of him in a raw shout, the cold so vicious he couldn't form a real scream. Buckshot thrashed beside him, fighting to keep his head above the water as cracks spread outward in jagged lines. Cole struggled for purchase, claws of ice cutting into his gloves as he tried to haul himself onto a ledge that kept breaking under his weight. The current, sluggish but insistent, tugged at his legs, trying to drag him under. He heard the panicked cries of his horse, the river gurgling, the wind roaring, and then another sound, one he didn't expect. A woman shouting, "Hold on!" He blinked through the sting of icy water. At the canyon's edge, a massive sorrel mare skidded to a halt, snow exploding around her hooves. Upon her back sat a woman so tall she looked half-carved from the cliffside rock, broad-shouldered, wrapped in furs, her braided dark blonde hair half-frozen from wind and snow. She swung down with the grace of someone who'd lived her whole life on dangerous ground. She grabbed a coil of thick rope from the mare's saddle, tying one end around the horn with practiced speed. Her breath puffed in steam as she sprinted forward, boots gripping where Cole's had slipped. "Grab the rope," she bellowed. Cole tried to answer, but his jaw barely moved. She tossed the rope across the broken ice, and it slapped against his shoulder. With numb fingers, he looped it around his chest, barely able to knot it. She dug her boots into the ice and shouted to her mare. "Hazel! Back!" The big mare leaned into the pull, muscles bunching beneath her shaggy winter coat. The rope tightened, squeezing Cole's ribs, and inch by inch he rose from the icy hole. The ledge cracked twice but held long enough for her to reach forward, grab the rope near his chest, and heave him fully onto solid ice. He rolled away from the hole, coughing water, vision failing in bursts of blackness. Buckshot, somehow, had scrambled to a broken chunk of ice and hauled himself onto firmer ground. The mare, Hazel, nudged him with her nose as if checking him for injuries. "Good girl," the woman panted, relief softening her sharp features. Then she knelt beside Cole. "You're half frozen. Can you move?" Cole tried to answer, but his tongue felt glued to the roof of his mouth. His limbs shook violently. "That's a no," she muttered. "All right. Let's get you out of here." She hauled him up, easily, shockingly easily. For a moment he rested against her, shivering against warm furs that smelled faintly of pine smoke. She lifted him onto Hazel's back and climbed up behind him, bracing him with her arms as she steered the mare toward the canyon wall where a narrow trail switchbacked upward. The wind faded as they climbed, replaced by the echoing silence of high pine forests. Cole drifted in and out of awareness. At one point he realized she wasn't just holding him upright. She was pressing him close, sharing her body heat, murmuring something soft he couldn't make out. When he came to again, they were at a cabin. A sturdy one, tucked against a rock wall. Smoke rose from the chimney. The woman swung off the mare, caught Cole before he toppled, and dragged him inside. Warmth hit him like a blow. She stripped off his coat and boots with brisk efficiency, then thrust a heavy wool blanket around his shoulders and forced him to sit by the fire. He couldn't stop shivering. His body clattered like a spooked rattlesnake. She knelt in front of him with a tin mug. Drink. He managed one mouthful of whatever hot concoction she'd brewed, herbal, strong, sharp enough to clear his head. Slowly the numbness faded from his fingers. The ice in his hair began to melt, dripping into the blanket. The woman watched him carefully, her blue-gray eyes alert and assessing. A scar cut down one eyebrow, a pale line against sun-toughened skin. "You're lucky," she said quietly. "If Hazel hadn't been restless this morning, I wouldn't have gone riding early. You'd have been dead under that ice in 5 minutes." Cole swallowed. "Reckon I owe you my life." She shrugged but didn't disagree. "Name's Rowan Hale." "Cole Maddox." She nodded, as if filing the name away. "Your horse is settled in the lean-to. He's shaken, but he'll be all right." The fire popped. Outside, the wind howled against the cabin walls, but here the warmth was thick and steady. Slowly, Cole's shaking eased. Rowan stood, hanging his soaked coat on a line near the stove. For the first time Cole took in her size fully. She stood a full head taller than him, shoulders broad beneath layers of fur and wool. She moved like someone used to heavy work, but there was a tiredness behind her strength, something quiet and bruised. "You live up here alone?" he asked. She hesitated. Not long, just long enough to reveal the answer before she spoke it. "Since the avalanche last winter," she said. "Took my husband. Buried half the gulch. I've stayed on, kept to myself." Her voice didn't crack. It didn't need to. The grief sat in the room like a ghost. "I'm sorry," Cole murmured. Rowan didn't answer. She only stirred the fire, her jaw tight. Outside, the storm deepened. Snow thickened against the windows. Cole shifted in his blanket, realizing slowly that the wind was changing pitch. Not just storm winds now, but a deeper rumble, low and dangerous. Rowan stiffened. "That," she whispered, "is the mountain moving." And before Cole could ask what she meant, the earth gave a warning tremor. Snow sliding somewhere above, gathering weight and speed. Another avalanche. The rumble deepened, rolling across the mountains as if the earth itself were groaning awake. Rowan bolted to the window, brushing frost from the glass. Cole staggered to his feet, feeling warm enough now to move without collapsing. "Is it coming this way?" he asked, breath tight in his throat. Rowan didn't answer immediately. Her gaze swept the canyon rim above the trail they had climbed, then shifted to the narrow pass leading back toward the valley. Snow billowed high in the distance like a white tidal wave cresting behind the trees. "It's hitting the old chute," she said, voice low. "If it breaks past those pines." A thunderous crack split the air as a band of ancient trees gave way, swallowed by the roaring cloud of snow and ice. Rowan cursed under her breath. Cole moved beside her. "Which way is it headed?" "Straight for the pass." She clenched her jaw. "That's the only way in or out of this ridge." He understood instantly. "If that gets blocked..." "We're stuck here," she finished. "No way through until spring meltdown." The avalanche tore through the lower slope, sounding like boulders grinding bones. Snow surged down the chute, smashing through brush, leaping a ravine, and slamming into the narrow pass in a billowing burst of white. Trees snapped. Powder shot into the air. Minutes later, the roar faded into a muffled hush. Rowan exhaled shakily. "It's done." Cole ran a hand through his still damp hair. "So, we're trapped." Rowan turned from the window, meeting his gaze squarely. "Looks like it." Another storm hit the cabin, wind hurling snow against the walls like a barrage of tiny stones. The temperature dropped sharply. The door rattled. Rowan checked the latch, then stirred the fire higher. Cole eased himself back onto the rug, blankets still around him. "How long do you think we'll be stuck?" She shrugged, the motion heavy. "Could be days. Could be weeks. Depends how deep the snow settled. Either way, you won't be riding out until we dig a path." "We?" he echoed. Her lips twitched. "You think I'm letting a half-frozen cowboy go swinging an axe in this weather alone? You'll help when you can." For now, you're half iced to the bone and lucky to be breathing. He smiled faintly. Yes, ma'am. Rowan huffed a breath that almost resembled a laugh. Don't ma'am me. Makes me feel older than the mountains. Cole sank deeper into the blanket's warmth. The fire crackled, filling the silence with a steady glow. Outside, the storm swallowed the world again. After a few minutes, Rowan brought him a bowl of hot stew. He took it gratefully, savoring the heat against his hands. You really prepared for the worst up here, he said, eyeing the stacked supplies, the neat rows of canned goods, the heavy winter tools leaning by the door. Rowan sat across from him. When you live alone in the mountains, you learn to be ready for anything. Her voice softened. My husband, Rylan, was like that. Always thinking ahead. Always checking slopes, listening to the snowpack. Her jaw clenched. The avalanche that took him. I still don't understand it. He was careful. Too careful to miss the signs. Cole set down the bowl. Sometimes the mountains don't give warnings. Rowan stared into the flames. I know. Her eyes glimmered for a heartbeat. Pain, raw and lingering. She shook it off quickly. Anyway, you're probably not eager to hear about a widow's troubles. Cole shook his head. You saved my life. I'm not eager to hear your story. I want to. That caught her off guard. She blinked once, as if unused to a stranger's kindness. It's been a long time since anyone sat in this cabin who wasn't just a memory, she admitted quietly. A long gust of wind passed over the roof, whistling through the eaves. Rowan stood, restlessly checking the shutters. Cole watched her move, steady, capable, carrying grief like a weight she refused to set down. How long have you been up here alone? He asked. Almost a year, Rowan said, still facing the window. After the avalanche buried our lower pasture, folks from the valley offered to help me rebuild. I told them I needed time. I told them I'd come down when I was ready. She turned toward him. I never did. Cole nodded. Sometimes a place holds too many memories to leave. And sometimes, Rowan replied softly, it holds too many to stay, but you stay anyway, because leaving feels like letting go. The words hung between them, warm and fragile. Cole cleared his throat gently. Well, if it helps, I'm glad you stayed. Or I'd be frozen solid in the river by now. She gave a tired smile. Guess the mountain wasn't ready to let either of us go. They ate in silence for a while, the storm battering the cabin rhythmically. Cole's muscles gradually regained feeling, not all of it pleasant, as painful tingles replaced numbness. Rowan noticed. You'll want to get those feet warmed carefully. She set a basin of warm water near the hearth. Not too hot too fast. That's how you do damage. He nodded, dipping his toes into the water with a hiss. You know a lot about cold weather injuries. When you live where the sun barely hits in winter, you learn. He watched her tend the fire, her silhouette outlined in gold. Strong hands. Strong shoulders. Yet beneath it, a weariness pressed into her bones. You ever think about going back down to the valley? Cole asked. She paused, poker halfway to the logs. Sometimes, she admitted. But every time I try to make myself leave, something in me stalls. What? Cole asked gently. She looked at him, eyes soft and wounded. I think I'm afraid the world moved on. That I don't fit down there anymore. Cole's chest tightened. I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. Rowan let out a dry laugh. Maybe. She turned back to the fire. But for now, the world has made the choice for us. We're here until that pass opens. Cole stretched his legs, feeling warmth seep into his bones. There are worse places to be trapped. Rowan arched a brow. Like where? Under a river. He chuckled. Fair point. The storm raged through the night, snow piling high enough to bury the porch. Rowan checked Hazel several times, trudging through the gusts with a lantern. When she returned, shaking snow from her shoulders, Cole felt a flicker of admiration for the woman who faced the mountain as if it were just another stubborn neighbor. "You're not planning to go out in this again tonight, are you?" he asked. "Hazel gets anxious when the wind's strong," Rowan said. "I'd rather soothe her than have her crash through my tack shed." Cole smiled. "She's a fine mare." "The best," Rowan said proudly. "Sure-footed as a mountain goat, stubborn as a preacher, and smarter than most men I've met." Cole lifted a brow. "Most." Rowan gave him a subtle, playful look. "I said most. Jury's still out on you." The comment warmed him more than the fire did. They settled in for the night on opposite sides of the hearth. Rowan leaned back in her chair, boots propped near the warmth. Cole rested on a thick quilt, his eyelids heavy. Just before sleep claimed him, he heard Rowan murmur something he wasn't sure he was meant to catch. "Maybe you fell through that ice for a reason." Cole wasn't sure whether the ache in his chest was from the cold, or something else entirely. Cole woke to the faint light of morning cutting through frost-laced windows. The storm had eased, leaving the world outside buried in fresh, glittering snow. The fire had burned down to embers, but the cabin was still warm. Rowan stood near the stove, tying her hair back with a leather band, her silhouette outlined by the pale dawn. "You're awake," she said when she heard him stir. Cole rubbed sleep from his eyes. "Didn't think I'd sleep that long." "You needed it." Rowan handed him a cup of hot coffee. "How are your hands and feet?" "Still attached, far as I can tell." She smirked. "Good. I'd hate to have saved your life just to watch your toes fall off." He chuckled, the sound rolling easily between them. Overnight, something had shifted. Less distance, more warmth than just firelight. Rowan pushed open the cabin door. Snow poured inward in a soft slide, a heavy drift pressing against the frame. Cole stood beside her, peering out. The world looked like a blank canvas, white, untouched, and impossibly still. "That's a lot," he muttered. Rowan nodded. "The pass'll be blocked clean through. Won't know how bad until we take a look." She stepped back inside. "We'll need shovels, axes, and patience. More of the last than the others." Cole set his cup down. "I'm ready whenever you are." Rowan turned to him, studying him for a beat. "You sure you're strong enough yet?" He straightened. "If you can haul me out of a river and survive here alone for a year, I can swing a shovel." Her expression softened, just a flicker, but enough to warm him. "All right then." Hours later, the two of them were following Hazel up the narrow ridge toward the pass. The mare's hooves punched through the surface snow with steady confidence. Rowan led her by the reins, Cole trailing behind with a pack of tools strapped to his back. The air was crisp, biting but clear. Sunlight sparkled across the blanket of fresh powder. Cole glanced at Rowan as she walked ahead, her stride powerful despite the steep incline. "You're used to doing this alone?" "I was." She kept her gaze forward. "Rylan and I used to check the slopes every day in winter. After I lost him, it felt easier not to see people than to answer their questions." Cole nodded, stepping carefully over a patch of hard-packed ice. "I get that. I lost my brother a few years back. Folks kept asking if I was all right. I wasn't. But saying it over and over didn't help." Rowan slowed, glancing back at him with something like understanding. "Grief's a strange partner. Doesn't matter how strong you are, it sits on your shoulders until it wants to leave." "Maybe it never leaves," Cole said. "Maybe it just shifts its weight." Rowan didn't answer, but her grip on Hazel's reins tightened. They continued upward until they reached the pass. The sight stole Cole's breath, not just because of the altitude. A mountain of snow blocked the narrow pathway, piled higher than a barn roof, scattered with broken branches, shattered ice, and half-buried tree trunks. The avalanche had sealed the exit as thoroughly as a locked door. Rowan let out a slow, heavy breath. "Well, that's worse than I hoped." Cole whistled softly. "We're not digging through that in a day." "Or a week," Rowan said. "Might take the whole thaw. But we can try to carve a path, if the weather stays calm. And if it doesn't, we make do. she answered simply. Cole looked up at the towering snowbank. Then he glanced at Rowan. Well, at least the company's good. She gave him a sideways look that was equal parts amused and shy, an expression he hadn't seen on her before. You're better company than silence, I'll give you that. They got to work. Shovels bit into packed snow. Axes chopped through branches frozen in place. Hazel hauled smaller loads away in a crate litter, steady and patient. Hours passed. Sweat froze on Cole's brow. Rowan's breath puffed in steady clouds. They carved maybe 2 feet into the drift, barely a dent. When the sun dipped behind the ridge, Rowan called it. That's enough. Mountain's winning today. Cole leaned on his shovel. Think we can beat it? Not in one go. She ran a gloved hand along Hazel's neck. But working together? Maybe. They headed back down the ridge as dusk painted the snow pink and gold. By the time they reached the cabin, exhaustion tugged at Cole's limbs, but a warm satisfaction settled in his chest, one he hadn't felt in a long time. Inside, Rowan lit the lamps and set a pot of stew on the stove. Cole helped by chopping vegetables, something simple and familiar. Their shoulders brushed once. Both felt it. Neither commented. After supper, Rowan sat on the hearthrug to brush Hazel's winter coat, the mare brought in for the night to keep her warm. Cole watched them, the firelight casting amber shadows across Rowan's face, softening her strength, revealing the gentleness beneath. She adores you, he said quietly. Rowan paused mid-brush. Hazel's been with me since before Rylan. She helped me survive losing him. I owe her more than I can say. Cole moved closer, sitting beside her on the rug. And who helped you survive? You can't give all the credit to the horse. Rowan's hands stilled. She stared into the flames, jaw tight. I didn't survive, she said softly. Not all the way. I kept breathing, but that's not the same thing. Cole's voice gentled. Maybe you're finding your way back now. Rowan looked at him, really looked at him. Her eyes reflected fire and grief and something new flickering beneath. Maybe, she whispered. A long quiet settled between them, warm and unhurried. Hazel snorted softly, nudging Rowan's shoulder as if approving of the moment. Cole leaned back on his hands. You know, being stuck here doesn't feel like a punishment. Not the way I thought. Rowan's lips curved in the faintest smile. You're saying my hospitality grows on a man? I'm saying it's the best thing that's happened to me all winter. She shook her head, but her cheeks warmed. Careful, Cole Maddox. You keep talking like that, and the mountain might think you want to stay. He met her gaze steadily. Maybe I'm not in a hurry to leave. Silence again, but a different kind this time. Not heavy. Not lonely. Something tender moved in the space between them, as slow and sure as thawing snow. Rowan shifted closer. Just a few inches. Enough for their arms to brush again, this time deliberately. Your trouble, she murmured. Only the good kind, he answered. She huffed a quiet laugh. Haven't had that in a long while. The fire crackled softly. The mountains outside stood silent and white. Inside the small cabin, warmth blossomed, not just from the flames. Rowan exhaled, long and steady, then rested her hand lightly over Cole's. Her grip was warm, strong, and hesitant, as if relearning a feeling she'd packed away with old grief. Cole turned his hand, threading his fingers through hers. Rowan, I don't want to replace anything you had. You're not replacing, she said, voice barely above a whisper. You're reminding me I'm still alive. Hazel nickered softly, shaking her mane as if punctuating the moment. Rowan smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since he'd met her. Guess the mountains aren't done with either of us, she said. Cole squeezed her hand. Then let's see what they've got planned. Outside, the snow glimmered beneath a rising moon. The blocked pass would take days, maybe weeks to clear. But neither of them felt the urgency anymore. For now, in the quiet cabin tucked against the ridge, with a sure-footed mare dozing beside them and fire warming the room, The thaw between two lonely hearts had already begun. And this time, neither intended to weather the mountains alone.